Korean barbecue is the most celebratory meal of all time. What could be better than sitting around a table and stuffing your faces with juicy grilled meat? In my opinion, nothing really beats that. We're going all out in this video. That means juicy cuts of meat, spicy marinades for pork belly, refreshing crunchy veggies, spicy banchan, and a couple of surprises in there for good measure. So let's party. There are a couple of things that are required to host a good and fun Korean barbecue night at home. And what better place to do that than at your local Korean grocery store? In the description, I've put together a checklist of things that you're gonna wanna get, but the gist of it is as follows. We're gonna start by picking out our cuts of beef. Brisket is a classic. That's something that you can get in the freezer section at something like an H-MART. They're these plastic containers full of rolled, sliced, thin brisket. I also really like to get something that's a little bit special. In this case, there was a Wagyu tri-tip that I ended up picking up. H-MART is usually good price-wise for stuff like this. It makes for just kind of that show-stopping experience. For the pork, belly is gonna be king. It's fatty, it cooks up really, really deliciously on the grill, and you can marinate it and make it delicious and spicy and sweet. When it comes to the banchan, think about a spicy, pickly sort of palate reset in between fatty bites. So kimchi is gonna be classic. I always just end up buying my kimchi. We keep a jar of it in the fridge pretty much at all times. So pick out something that's appropriate to your spice tolerance. Usually an H-MART has a section of pre-prepared banchan as well. So things like marinated cucumbers, radish. For me, I went with some pickled cucumbers. They're in this like spicy marinade, super delicious. And then also pickled radish is really nice. These like yellow, delicious pickled radish. I'm actually gonna make those myself, and I'll show you how to make those as well. They're a good reset to the palate when you've got too much fat and too much grease going on. Everyone's gonna want their own little dish of sauce in front of their plate, which is gonna be for dipping, and that's gonna be samjang, kind of the classic go-to. It's a combination of doenjang, which is sort of the Korean miso paste. It's made with soy in a similar way that miso is made, and gochujang, which is a spicy, sort of sweet, tangy, fermented pepper paste. The combination of those two things and a couple other ingredients make samjang. We're not just gonna be eating meats and banchan all night. We're gonna have some veggies that go on the grill as well. Mushrooms are amazing. I talked about this in my So You Don't Like Mushroom video, but they can't really be overcooked, so they can sit on the grill for a while as long as they don't burn, which means people can kind of pick at them and eat them when they want. Pick a medley that you and your party's gonna like. The most important part of this whole experience is sitting around a table and cooking together, which means probably something like a butane stove like you see here. These work amazingly well and are pretty cheap. For me at H-MART, this was about like $25. You can get a grill pan specifically for Korean barbecue. My recommendation is get one that's easy to clean. You don't want something that's hard to clean because you're never gonna do it again if it's too difficult. H-MART had these available for me, but I'll link down in the description for some options I found on Amazon for you to pick those up as well. With any sort of cooking in this manner, there are a couple of dangers to be aware of. Make sure that you're cooking this with enough ventilation. Carbon monoxide poisoning is no joke. Usually it's not something to be massively worried about if you've got like a range with a fan, or if your room is large enough, you can just open a window, you're gonna be fine. The other thing is get a fire extinguisher. This is the time where if you don't have a fire extinguisher in your house, get one, pick one up. You're gonna be cooking with live fire, you're gonna have people around, there are gonna be drinks. Just have a fire extinguisher that you know how to use nearby. For the prep work, which is honestly the majority of the work, we're gonna start with our meats. The brisket is ready to go as is, but if the package is frozen like mine was, you're gonna wanna give it a chance to defrost in the fridge. The little tubes of brisket can be unrolled and they cook in like a minute on the hot grill. They're cheap, you can get a ton of them, and they're gonna be great dipped in our samjang or our special seasoning salt that we're gonna make. These pieces of tri-tip are beautiful, fatty, and we're gonna leave them as is. We'll get a nice char on both sides on the grill, and then I'll show you how to do the cool like tongs in one hand, scissors in the other sort of vibe that you see at a lot of Korean barbecues. It's really simple, but just make sure you've got sharp scissors and you can get beautiful, fatty little chunks of meat for everybody. The flank steak is gonna be the thing that I cook first, so be sure to have that ready to go. You could easily like get a ribeye or your own flank and cut it yourself to choose your thickness, but this is just easy, and if you're gonna really want to actually do this and get into it, ease is an important factor. For the beautiful, spicy pork belly, we're gonna use an adjusted version of my previous pork belly recipe. To your container, add in 2 tablespoons of gochujang and a ½ tablespoon of Gochugaru or Korean red pepper flakes. These are really tasty and help bring a little bit of spice to the party. Add in ½ tablespoon of dark soy sauce, a tablespoon and a half of light soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of honey, a tablespoon of mirin, a tablespoon of rice vinegar, 1 clove of grated garlic, and 2 sliced green onions. Give that a good mix and you're ready to add the pork belly. Your pork belly pieces, if they're too long, go ahead and slice them in half. Think of something that can either be eaten with rice or in a wrap. You want the size to kind of dictate how fast it cooks and how easy it is to eat, so just be mindful of your guests' eating experience. Cut them in half, mix it together with your hands, get all of that delicious marinade in the pork, and let it sit in the fridge while we prep everything else. 30 minutes is kind of the lowest time, a couple of hours is great. When you get Korean barbecue, as mentioned, you wanna have some beautiful sauces and salts to dip everything into, because for the red meat, it's gonna be pretty unseasoned. The pork belly's got a sort of marinade on it, but the beef itself is gonna stand out as the beefy deliciousness, and we're just gonna punch it up with some doenjang and some seasoning salt. The doenjang is gonna be made by mixing a 1/4 cup of doenjang with 2 tablespoons of gochujang, 1.5 tablespoons of honey, 2 cloves of grated garlic, 1 tablespoon of toasted sesame oil, 2 teaspoons of toasted sesame seeds themselves, and 3 or so sliced green onions. You don't have to be precise with the green onions, just add a bunch. Mix that together and let it sit in the fridge, and that gives us this savory, sweet, punchy sauce that's gonna be used for dipping or in a wrap as well. This thing is like seriously so delicious. It's kind of crazy how good this is. Just with these few ingredients, you get something that is gonna absolutely blow your guests' mind. Lots of Korean barbecue places have a little dish of salt and a little dish of sesame oil for dipping, but I like having this like Gochugaru sesame salt that's made by using 2 parts flaky salt, 1 part toasted sesame seeds, and 1 part Gochugaru. This makes for like a nutty, spicy salt that you can put into the sesame oil and then you dip your meat into it. It's really delicious. Now for arguably the most important part, the banchan. This is where you get to choose your own adventure. To make our crispy pickled radish, we'll need a Korean radish, which is much larger than a daikon, and it's actually a little bit spicier. If you can only get daikon, you can totally use that, but this is what I've gotten. My H-MART had them. For today, I'm gonna use half of this whole radish, honestly, just because it's massive and my container can't fit more than that. Peel the outside and work that down into bite-sized pieces. It's helpful if you've got one side that's too rounded, just cut off one of the rounded sides and use that as your flat base. These are gonna be a fridge pickle, so don't make the pieces massive. They're just going to, in a short period of time, absorb the pickling liquid and turn into something like crispy and refreshing. Once those are taken down to size, get out a bowl and season them heavily with salt and mix it around with your hands. The salt is gonna draw out the water in the next 30 minutes, and then we are going to replace that water with our flavorful pickling liquid. After those 30 minutes are done, wash the salty water out and place the radishes in a bowl that can be sealed and placed in the fridge. To make our pickling liquid, combine 1 part sugar with 2 parts seasoned rice vinegar and 3 parts water. For my size container, half a cup was the right amount for the 1 part. I also added a couple teaspoons of Gochugaru to the container as well. This just gives it a little bit of spice and a little bit of something extra as well. The pickling liquid just needs enough heat to melt the sugar, and I like that yellow color that you see in all of the packaged versions, so I added a little bit of turmeric to dye the pickling liquid. It's not a requirement, but it just makes it look a little bit more professional. Once the sugar is dissolved, pour that liquid onto the radishes and store that sealed in the fridge until you're ready to eat. They need a few hours to really get to that first stage of being pickled, so give them enough time before you're gonna actually be eating. For the kimchi, a nice store-bought brand is gonna work really well, but be sure to take it out of the jar and actually cut it down to bite-sized pieces. Sometimes they're a little bit too big and you get the really heavy, crunchy cores of the kimchi, which are delicious, but they can be a little bit too much for a bite if there's more kimchi than meat. Because this whole thing, although seems really intense, it's pretty simple. The balance of everything is the most important part of it. That's what we're playing with today. Another classic and probably my personal favorite of the banchan is these spicy pickled cucumbers. They're tangy, crispy, and pair amazingly well with everything at the table. I'm gonna be making a cucumber recipe that's pretty similar to this in the future, so go ahead and subscribe if you wanna see that. Onto the veggies for the grill. As I mentioned, I loved mushrooms with this because they can take the heat of the grill without being overcooked. Think of like king trumpet, enoki, anything along those lines are gonna work really well. For the trumpets, slice them into pretty thin planks, and we're gonna leave them large because we can use our scissors later to cut them down into bite-sized pieces. I'll go ahead and cut the ends off the enoki and wash them thoroughly. They can get a little bit of dirt throughout each of these sort of stems, so just wash them. The heat of the grill is gonna cook off any water that sticks around anyways. Any seasonal veggie is also gonna work really well for this, so think of like peppers, onions, squash, anything that's not gonna burn, not too much sugar, but can take the heat of the grill. I've just got some bell peppers here. I'm gonna slice those into big chunks. My wife loves bell peppers, so those are what I've got. A couple of really nice accoutrements. Korean green chilies are delicious. They're like sharp, spicy, and they really help reset your palate after too much fatty meat. You can grill those, you can leave them raw. People put them in wraps. They're a fun, delicious way to continue the night without feeling too heavy. I also want some green onion. You can slice those into long strips and then dunk them into some ice water to get these really, really beautiful curls. It's always good to have those around. You can put them on your rice, you can put them in your wraps, and they just make for a really delicious addition. A little bit of oniony flavor without being crazy oniony like a raw onion. Speaking of wraps, we are gonna need those for our meats when we come off. Everybody wants to be able to have their own bites, and the wraps make for a really, really good option. Perilla leaves, or you can see them labeled as like sesame leaves, work crazy well for this. They're thin, they're delicious, and you can put meat, rice, kimchi, pickles, any sort of thing in here and make your own little bite. Slice off the stems of some perilla leaves and put those in a bowl. Also Boston lettuce, if you're not as into the perilla leaves, you can use that as well. It's thin, it's crispy, it's refreshing. Wash that, take the time to take care of it, put it in a bowl, and we're gonna set that aside. We also need some fluffy white rice. Wash it till the water runs clear. Do 1 part rice to 1.5 part water, cook it in a rice cooker. There you go, you've got beautiful, fluffy white rice. That's gonna be ready for later. Now for the really fun part. In my opinion, no Korean barbecue experience is complete without beer and soju to go along with it. For me, I love like international beers, especially when they're like cheap and refreshing. So things like Hite and Cass are kind of the 2 classics. So if you can't find them, you can go with any kind of light beer that you like, Miller Lite, Coors Light. Just get something light, refreshing, something that's gonna help wash down all that delicious, fatty, juicy meat that we're eating. For the soju, the flavor possibilities are basically endless. Soju is a Korean distilled liquor that usually hovers around like 13 to 25% alcohol. So a little bit stronger than wine, but not as strong as something like sake or vodka. They're pretty cheap. Peach, lychee, yogurt, those are some of my favorites. I had a green grape here that was really, really delicious as well. Okay, to really throw down, mix about half a shot of soju with like 2 to 3 shots of a light beer. The ratios don't have to be perfect here. A good way to think of it is it like 30% soju, 70% beer. It's a good ratio for somek. Mix that together by either putting a chopstick on the bottom and slapping the chopstick with another chopstick, or you can take your spoon and like jam it really hard into the bottom of the glass, and then you just drain it all in one. And that is somek, the combination of beer and soju, just a classic Korean barbecue drink. To really, really do this, you're gonna wanna set up your grill in the middle of a well-ventilated room. If you've got enough space, you're gonna set out all of your meats, all of your veggies, all of your banchan, all of your sauces, everything to go kind of on one massive table. That way people can like pick and choose as you go. If you don't have as much space, do it in batches. So start with the brisket, then move your way to the flank, then maybe take a veggie break, then do your main, if you've got tri-tip, do that, or ribeye, whatever large cut you have, move on to that. I recommend saving the spicy pork belly or any kind of marinade that you've got towards the end. Every person should have their own samjang, their own dipping salt and sesame oil in front of them. Give people their own plates and bowls as well. That way they can put their cooked ingredients on them. This is why it's the best. For Korean barbecue, like every bite gets to be your own decision. Do I want this brisket dipped in samjang? Do I want it on its own? Do I want sesame oil? Do I want rice? Do I want kimchi? Every bite's a decision, so you don't get that taste bud fatigue that you get with a lot of meals. If you start to get that, everybody take a bite of a chili and your taste buds are gonna be reset in an instant. It is the most fun, in my opinion, you can have cooking at home. I gotta tell you, this is going to be on rotation in our house probably once a month now. It's pretty affordable once you've got the setup. All you need is the meat and maybe some banchan if you don't have some in the fridge. Everything else is pretty much just like normal, cheap stuff that you're gonna have around anyways. And it is such a fun way to have a different dinner and to really just celebrate and laugh and enjoy together. And this is like the best part of cooking all wrapped up into one. And this is why I love it as a birthday dinner, but now it's gonna become probably a once a month dinner, and I cannot wait. I really, really, really want you to incorporate Korean barbecue into your cooking experience. I hope this makes it easy for you. If you've got any questions, I am not a Korean barbecue expert by any means, but please drop them in the comments and I'd love to respond and just let you know what I think. If you wonder like what meats would be good or any marinades or any just ideas in general for your Korean barbecue at home experience, let me know. I'd love to kind of continue that conversation and help you out as much as I can. Invite some friends over, tell them it's gonna be a good time, and get ready to blow their minds with a fun, delicious, and pretty exciting meal. Everybody's gonna love it, and you are gonna look like a superstar in front of your friend. Like, it's gonna be amazing. It's a win-win-win. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. I wanna give a massive shout out to the people supporting me directly on Patreon. There's a group of people who have decided that they think my content is worth supporting, and I just appreciate it. It means the world to me. If you think that this type of content is worth supporting directly, go to patreon.com/CameronMarty. If you liked the video, go ahead and subscribe. And if there's somebody in your life that you think would benefit from knowing how to make Korean barbecue, send them this video. Thank you so much for watching. Now get out and make this Korean barbecue for your loved ones. Cheers.